Hello, and good evening, everyone. I hope you're all sufficiently chilled out after that little intro music there. Hello and welcome to this Mackmyra tasting. My name is Richard McKeon. I'm a brand ambassador with Mackmyra. Joining me tonight as a co-host, I've got Carl over here. Hello, Carl. Good evening.
Hello. Evening. Hello all. Yeah, I've come out from behind the camera tonight. I thought I'd have my little spell in front of the bright, shiny lights on this Thursday evening. So yeah, thanks for having me.
It's good. It's going to be good to see your face and not just talk to you on the private chat as we go through. Looking forward to it.
I like my little
joining Carl and I, a very special guest we have in Vin Perry French here of No Nonsense Whisky fame. So hello, Vin. Thank you very much for coming, giving us your time.
No problem at all. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been good to come on the show. Yeah,
well, I've seen so many of your videos talking about Mackmyra and things. Now it'd be good to have a chat. I've never interacted with you while you've been sat in that room. I've only ever watched in a very nice and friendly way, of course. So the tasting, how's it all going to work? Everyone's sitting at home, hopefully with your packs ready to go. We'll start off by getting to know Vin. We haven't had a guest on for our monthly tastings that we've done before, and we've got a special reason, and we're surprised when we get to it about why we've invited Vin on. So we'll start off by getting to know him. We'll do a bit of an intro into Mackmyra, and then we'll get into the whiskey. We've got 4 core range whiskies tonight, and then a separate one that's come aside from the box in the form of the Grönt Te. We'll go through them 1 dram at a time. We'll talk about tasting notes, the things that the 3 of us might find. We'll try and get you guys at home to chip in and comment and let us know what you might find if you think we're mad and can't find any of them, or whether or not you agree with us. There's usually a good mixture of the two. With each dram as well, we'll give everyone a bit of a tip for those who might need it, at least on assessing a whiskey, how to nose things, how to taste things. I think it's always useful, especially for those who might be newer to it. Each dram discuss whiskey in general. And anyone that wants to comment, let us know. Questions, comments, thoughts, whatever you have, please do. So I said we'd start off by getting to know Vin a little bit. I said, we don't usually have guests on for these. It's usually just myself and Mickey and Carl in the background. But now we've got both of you here. But Vin, I think a lot of people who are probably active members of the whiskey community, especially the virtual ones, and especially again in YouTube as well, will probably recognize you if they don't already know you quite well from your channel and everything. But can you give everyone who might not know you a bit of an intro and a rundown into who you are and what you do?
Sure, yeah. Well, as you so kindly introduced me, I'm Vin. I'm No Nonsense Whisky right here. I started out maybe 4 years ago doing a YouTube channel, and that's kind of my mainstay still now. Just reviewing whiskies, nothing too serious, nothing too casual. Really short, kind of 5 to 10 minute videos, very consumable videos. That's kind of expanded out a little bit more now to other social medias and things like that. But yeah, that's kind of really where I'm at. Is reviewing whiskies, but coming at it from the angle. Like I'm not a industry guy. I have a day job. I am a drinking whiskey person. So for me, it's all about, is the whiskey good value? That's really the kind of the mainstay of it. And that's why, I started covering Mackmyra bottles way before even like brand reps and stuff existed, I think, pretty much. I just happened to get a bottle and just went from there. Because these guys do really good stuff. And that's pretty much why I'm here today, to rave about them as much as they rave about themselves.
Yeah, well, I think like I said at the beginning, I've been watching your videos for some time anyway. So to me, you're something of a whiskey celebrity, I'll say, and you've got quite a lot of subscribers, if I'm not mistaken. You've got to be one of the most popular sort of ones, especially in the UK at least. So how many people do you have subscribing now?
Yeah, it's going really well. It's so I'm just about to go over 10,000 subscribers, and I'm planning. Yeah, it's really big, really good. I'm planning a few things, but we'll talk about that at the sort of towards the end of the show. Yeah. So by my reckoning, I might be wrong now, but I'm sort of 3rd in the UK behind obviously the venerable Ralphie, and then Roy Aquavite. But as I like to say, England. Number 1 in England, so I'll take that. That's my little territory.
Yeah. Good. And then bring it down to county level if anyone goes past you and things like that.
Yeah,
well.
run along the bottom as well. If you want to follow me on Insta, I'm carlos.the.mac. We've got Rich's Twitter, McWhiskey, and then of course Vin, No Nonsense Whisky down at the bottom as well. So yeah, follow us on our socials. Got to up that Insta game. All the rest of it.
The last time I checked in, I think Vin, I think you had 7,000 followers. So I think lockdown's probably exponential growth. It sounds like for the channel. So.
Absolutely. I mean, I talk about this a lot on the channel, but it's whiskey as a general interest. Obviously, the hardcore people stay around all year, but as a general interest to the Gen Pop, it tends to peak over Christmas and then disappear again over summer. People move on to gins and other things over summer. But because everyone was been at home and hadn't had anything else to do, it hadn't really dropped off in summer last year. And then Christmas just went insane again this year. So for me, it's been very good. I've obviously been set up to do these live streams for a couple of years now, and companies had to kind of really get into it this year, and that's where I've had kind of the edge, I guess, because I've already been there ready to go. Yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
So we'll dive a little bit more into your channel and that side of things a little bit later on. I think we should get started onto a little bit of whiskey tasting and a little bit of the history. So Rich, are you going to take us through a little bit of the Mackmyra history? And then I'll get us started on the first dram, yeah?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, we'll do this. I know everyone's keen to get to the drams, but we'll do this little bit first, and then we'll sort of spread out and expand on some of the points I'll go through now. We'll talk about in a bit more detail once we've got some whiskey in our glass. So please comment as well and let us know, guys, if you the first time you've ever tried Mackmyra, if you've never heard of us before, if this was a gift for you, anything like that. Always keen to know what sort of crowd we've got in tonight. Please do. So it all starts back in 1999 is when we first started producing whiskey. We're the first single malt whiskey distillery in Sweden. It all came about, the idea was formed the year before in 98 when our eight founding members, three of them you can see here, a few more there, were all on a skiing holiday together. They'd all been friends at university and went on a skiing holiday regularly. And this one fateful year, each of them had brought along a bottle of scotch. There had been no plan or preparation to do it. It was just a coincidence. And they got to talking. And at some point, through the holiday or through the bottle, somebody said, why is nobody making single malt in Sweden? There's a big appetite for it there, a huge market for scotch in particular at the time. But no one was making it. So they set about doing it. They had no experience. There was no distillers or brewers or anything amongst them. So travelled Scotland, toured a few distilleries, spoke to a few people. How do we start? How do we set up? Went back to Sweden, spoke to the government, got all the licenses in place. And on December the 18th, 1999, just before the turn of the millennium, so we can have established 1999 on our bottles and everything, the first new make spirit came off the still. One of the things, or several of the things, they set out to sort of be and do, and our identity was three key things really: be keep it Swedish, be Swedishness, be innovative and sustainable, climate smart, and we'll expand on those points with each dram that we go through. Part of that being Swedish means all of our ingredients are Swedish, and innovation wise, some of the drams, one in particular tonight, you'll see some proof of that, and the sustainability when we get to our Gravity distillery. Which is a point. So we've been in 3 different locations since we started. First 3 years were basically in a series of garden sheds. 2002. Well, yeah, it was 2002. 2002 moved into the Brooks Distillery, which was our home until 2011, 2012, when we moved into our Gravity Distillery, which we're always keen to talk about. We've got warehouses all over Sweden. We've got them on islands. We've got one on top of a mountain, and we've got the one that we're most famous for, the Bodas mine, where probably 90% of our whiskey is matured. We're 50 meters underground, an old disused iron ore mine, keeps our whiskey out of the bitter Swedish cold, at least over the winter. I think that's something that I found very interesting. When I first found Mackmyra, I thought that was quite, for want of a better term, very cool thing. We've got three key ranges, 2 of which we'll be trying this evening. So we've got core range, we've got our seasonal range. Core will just be, whiskies will always be the same, year after year. Seasonal we bring out twice a year. We've got a winter, autumn release and a spring summer release, and they'll have some sort of reflection on the time of year that they come out. And our moment range, which are our really very limited in number, very selective casks that we would choose and put together for a release, and our sort of upper echelon of our upper tier, I'd say, of our range. And the person that puts them all together is the world-renowned in whiskey circles, Angela Donaccio, the second woman in the Whiskey Magazine Hall of Fame. Was mentored by Jim McEwen of Brookladdy, Bamore, and now what's the newest Ardnahoe? Beg your pardon. There we go. And sort of slow down for a moment there. But yeah, Jim McEwen, one of the biggest names in whiskey, was her mentor for some time. So yeah, I mean that's it for an elevator pitch into the history. As I said, we'll expand with each dram that we get to and talk about those things in a bit more detail. But the running order. Last thing for me will be, so it's not going to go in the order that your box has been delivered in. We're going to start with the Brooks whiskey. Second whiskey will be the Mack. Third whiskey will be the Grönt Te, the green tea. Fourth will be the Svensk Ek. Fifth will be the Svensk Rook. Reason being, start with the lightest profile, move your way through to the heaviest, and then the smoky ones at the end. That's it. Last order of business. Oh, sorry, Carl.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Vin's done our job for us there, to be fair. You didn't have to read them out. You can say, and if you'd like to see modelled down below, Vin has lined them up perfectly for us. So if you want to do the same thing at home, go for it. Get your sample nice and ready. Thanks for that history, Rich. Go for it.
One more thing, mate. No, so we've got a giveaway, Carl. I thought.
I know, mate. I was about to go into it. I was taking the button from you, mate. I was waiting. I wasn't going to wait for you to give it me. I was just taking it. We're giving away some merch tonight, guys. So yeah, please stay tuned in all the way to the end. We've got a little question for you at the end, so please make sure you pay attention to the bits and bobs we're telling you. It'll be a fastest finger first question. So we've got a prize of a lovely mug and a t-shirt for the winner, and then we've got just a mug for the runner-up. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Always like to give away a little bit of merch. So shall we get started? We're going to start with the Brooks whiskey. So if you want to get a little pour in your glass. So this one is 41.4% ABV. This is our light, bright, I guess what you'd call our breakfast-friendly whiskey. We get sort of a few chuckles when we call it our breakfast whiskey. We're not insinuating that you have to have it for breakfast, but I guess the point we're trying to make is that it's light, it's friendly, it's approachable. You could, if you wanted to, drink it for breakfast. Could responsibly. In terms of casks that have gone into this one, so one of the things we focus on a lot here at Mackmyra is a particular flavor profile, a cask profile. We're not necessarily looking for it must be X age or Y age. So we've got 200 litres of first fill bourbon cask going in there, and they do a lot of the heavy lifting on this one. 100 litre first fill Swedish Oak using our elegant recipe. 100 litres first fill sherry casks, again using our elegant recipe. And then 200 litre ex-bourbon smoked tail first fill. So in terms of nosing, I guess everyone kind of has sort of the different kind of ways of nosing, and I'll come to yours actually, Vin, in a second. But from my perspective, I sort of like to make sure I just swill it a little bit in the glass. I like to open up a little bit, gently kind of bring up to my nose, switch from nostril to nostril. I think some say keep your mouth open when you're breathing in. I don't know if anyone's sort of got a particular preference on that, but you can do that as well. And yeah, always like to go in for a little sip.
Cheers.
Skull, and live with it a little bit, and then keep going back to it, just little sips at a time, because you'll find that it changes and develops as you drink it. But hopefully, because it's the first one we're starting with, we've gone with quite a light one. Should be quite light, easy drinking. A few of the notes you'll pick up on, hopefully. So butterscotch, citrus, and pear. Pear is something that's quite dominant through the Mackmyra range, and hopefully you'll see that kind of through line as you go with our spirit. Fresh fruit, pepper, a little bit of spicy toffee. And then on the end, a little bit of spicy oak and apple pie. So as you're drinking it, as you're living with it, please feel free to drop in the comments. Let us know how you're getting on with it. Let us know what you're picking up in terms of your flavour profile and what you're picking up in terms of your notes. Vin, to you, man, what do you get from the Brooks whiskey?
Well, actually, it's something I found out when I first started tasting Mackmyra. You're quite right. What you say, there's a definite theme throughout the bottles that really kind of stands out at Mackmyra. But for me, this is the one I always recommend to people who are Scotch drinkers, because it's probably the most relevant to Scotch. It's got a lot of those Speyside apples, pear, orchard flavours.
Yeah.
And it's an easy transition from a Scotch drinker to come over to this. I mean, none of them are too far removed from a Scotch brethren, but as you'll mention later, there's a lot more innovation, I think, because they're not so bound by the regulations.
Yeah.
For me, bags of vanilla. And then I'm skipping ahead to the palate. Like you said, one of my favorite things to do is to have a sip before I start talking about the nose, because I find it clears the whole thing out, and then come back to the nose itself. But yeah, very spicy, very creamy, dare I say. Not a very good tasting note, but yeah, very, very creamy.
I take creamy as a tasting note. I think I regularly put down sometimes you can detect that texture on the nose. I think with Klein Niche, you get that waxiness. I think there's quite a few of ours. You get some butteriness, creaminess. That's sort of like it's got like a thick nose to it. Some of them at least. Yeah, I think I'll take creaminess to it. Yeah. I saw Bakewell Tart come up. I think that's an interesting one there. So you said about the theme, about a running theme through them. Fruits and warm spices, I think is what I sort of find. You can detect in most of them, orchard fruits in particular. I think Bakewell Tart for me, that's got a bit of icing sugary sort of sweetness to it, which I think you can definitely get with this. Then that cherry, if you're lucky, that hasn't fallen off in the packet and disappeared or so. And then that sort of warm spices and things with it. Banana for me, toffee apples for sure, Graham. Yeah, banana. I can't escape those like banana penny sweets. Like the foam banana penny sweets when I get to the palate.
Not quite to Mike's liking. That's no worries, brother.
To Mike. Well, we've got 4 more to go through, Mike. So hopefully we can find something for you. So we have. Yeah. But yeah, that comparison towards Speyside, I think Speyside Lowland, that would be where if I was gun to my head and had to do it, that's what I would probably put them towards. Yeah. But the Svensk Ek, I would say, sort of transitions a bit more Highlandy. Yeah. When we get to that bit more sort of robust. Yeah.
So besides the creamy side of things, Vin, anything else you wanted to sort of pick up on the Brooks?
Yeah, like when we're talking about the palate again, it's got this real amazing spiciness to it on the kind of back end to it that I think gives it this extra layer that it almost doesn't really deserve to have. It's so accessible and so cheap, and it's got this very strong dynamic to it that most entry level whiskies don't have. And it's I find it's one you can get lost in. I mean, I can get this for something like £35 in the UK. It's not expensive at all. And in comparison to other whiskies of that price bracket, it's just so deep and so dynamic.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that's sort of quite key, especially in the market at the moment, is that there's so much sort of jockeying for shelf space to stand out. Some people may think with some trepidation, should I try a Swedish whiskey? And hopefully this is enough to kind of grab you and go, take you almost by the sort of put an arm around you, say, look, I've got enough of character about me to interest you, but I'm not going to drag you around too much. Is I suppose the way I kind of look at it, if that makes sense to anyone.
I think it has to be tried. You say like jockeying for space and things. I couldn't agree more with it. It needs to be tried. I accidentally found Mackmyra at a whiskey festival in 2018, long before it started with us. I had no idea. I walked up thinking it was a Scottish outfit just because of the Mac at the beginning. Which is probably not a bad moment to explain the translation, Carl. I don't know if you want to take that one.
Yeah, so what Mackmyra? The direct literal translation. Well, it sounds less glamorous when you say it, to be fair. So for those of you who maybe tuned in before and caught any of our other shows, you may have heard it. But Mackmyra essentially translates literally into English as midge swamp. So thank you for joining us this evening, everybody, and pouring a little glass of midge swamp. Or midge bog, yeah. Hopefully you can understand why Mackmyra sounds a little bit more glamorous and mysterious.
Maybe we should have left it until halfway through or something, but it always cracked. When I found out, I've been working here for a number of months before I found out the translation. I just sort of never thought, because Mackmyra is a place. It's about an hour and a half north of Stockholm. It is a location. It's not just a company trying to sound Scottish, as I thought when I first found them. It is an actual village. It's a location where one of the founders is from and where our distillery is now. But yeah, Mac, small, nibbly, flying insect, midge. Myra is like, wetlands, bog, swamp, that sort of thing. So midge bog. So I think to us, it just looks like a normal sort of name, quite a cool looking name. But to people in Sweden, which is our biggest market, they all buy this whiskey knowing that it's called midge bog, and absolutely love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny you say stuff like that, because if you look at a lot of Scottish distilleries, they're normal names to us. But like my favourite example is like Glengoyne, and that literally translates to Valley of the Geese.
Yeah.
So all of the glens are a valley of some sort. Glenlivet is just literally Glen of the River Livet. So they're all kind of named on where they're based. So why not be a midge bog?
That's a fair point. That is an absolutely fair point. And that if anyone comes at us with, we're not drinking that, it's called midge bog, well, I'll throw a Valley of the Geese at you. How's about that? So we're not trying to start beef with Glengoyne. Don't go running to them and saying we're starting beef with them. That's not, that's not what we're doing.
Which on the bottles as well, Carl. On the if Connor, our colleague Connor in the background can show a picture of the Brooks whiskey again. Hopefully we'll be able to see in the picture. You can't quite detect. Perhaps I can show it on my camera. Here we can have that. You can just see. Oh, there you go. This little orange spot there. That's one of about maybe 9 or 10 across the bottle, which are just little orange midges. Because Mackmyra, and this is the bottle itself is covered with stencils of our history of the different distilleries we've been in, the little 30-litre casks that we had to start using, which we'll touch on. So little midges all over the bottle. I think that's
I never picked up on the midge thing. I'd seen all the other illustrations, I never picked up on the midge thing. So there you go. Every day's a school day for everyone, literally. So yeah, as Rich mentioned, so a bit about our sort of cask, I guess, back our stills back in the original days. So when we began producing in '99, the founders used a tiny 100-litre hand-welded still. You can see it in the image there, and this happened to be perfect for giving us a 30-litre cut of usable whiskey, which suited a 30-litre cask size, and that's kind of where sort of our ethos around 30-litre cask kind of came from. In 2002, we moved to our first proper distillery, the Brooks Distillery, as you can see there, which used to be an old ironworks. So a very industrial place. Brooks literally translates to work or use. So that's, again, part of the reason why that's sort of named as such and why we've called the Brooks Whiskey the Brooks Whiskey. We also bought, as we started to ramp up production, a couple of big Forsyth stills, pretty much the go-to for stills made. And they're the ones that are currently in our Gravity Distillery as of now. So as you've seen in the previous picture, we stayed there until 2012. And all through that time, up until 2012, when we moved into the Gravity Distillery, that was a lot of the time for our growth for us. So we had things like a Preludium series and things like that as we kind of sort of built our name within Sweden and then started to gradually spread our wings. And most of the whiskey we're drinking tonight was actually distilled at the Brooks Distillery, which I didn't know actually the other day. So again, more learnings for me. So yeah, go on.
All learning constantly. I think even, Vin just, he said he's got a day job, but he talks about whiskey all the time and different brands. You and I, we've got a job in the industry. We're big whiskey people. You've got a second job, in whiskey outside of this as well. But all of us, everybody watching this evening, as well as the three of us, are all learning things here and there.
Yeah, it's a passion. I think you have to. I think you have to be passionate about the product to actually sort of talk about it. And certainly from your perspective, Vin, surely to produce and edit and all the rest of the things you have to do for a YouTube channel, you must have to be passionate about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the wonderful things about whiskey is that we all love this wonderful liquid one way or the other, and it brings forward all walks of life, from like daily labourers all the way up, to academia and all sorts of stuff. So you meet all kinds of wonderful people. I mean, for me, when I first started doing the videos, the first video took me an entire weekend to hash through and try and figure out all the tech behind it. Now I'm a bit more streamlined. I can produce a video in about an hour and a half, which is pretty good.
Nice.
But yeah, so really for me, it was just an outlet because at the time I didn't have any friends who were into whiskey. And I was starting to enthuse about it. I was starting to find out about it. I was starting to read books about it. And I was talking to my wife about it. And she's like, my God, we stopped talking about whiskey. It's so boring. And I was like, I need to talk to somebody about it. So I'm going to talk to this little camera here and see who else wants to listen. And that's how I got it.
And my partner, Heather, has to listen through the wall. She's in there now. And she can only ever hear me just saying, doing regular tastings, talking about the same whiskies quite often. So one day I might just call in sick, and she can probably just come and sit in here and do it for me, I think. But my outlet is this. So I don't get much time to talk about it at home. But she likes the smoky whiskies more so than anything else. If it's not peated whiskey, she's not too fussed. And when I present her with something that is unpeated, if she likes it, that to me says that that's a good whiskey. Because it's got lots of flavour to it, and it just doesn't taste like I don't know. When I was 18, 19 and drinking whiskey, I hated it. I didn't like it at all. I was probably drinking the wrong stuff, or a good whiskey is a whiskey you like to drink. There's no such thing as the wrong stuff, but not the stuff for me was probably what I describe it as. So I always had this that tastes like whiskey in my mind. So when I started finding whiskies that tasted of different things, and you could find orchard fruits or some discernible notes and discernible differences, that's when I started getting switched onto it big time. And peat for me. Carl, I know you're a big peat fan as well.
To be fair, I'm peat. I'm Irish. I'm Swedish. I'm Japanese. I'm Taiwanese. I'm genuinely just loving whiskey. If it's interesting, I'm down with it. I don't really care too much about the necessarily. It has to be a massive backstory or anything like that. If it tastes good, cool. I'll have some more. And like we've seen in some of the comments tonight as well, some liking this one, some picking up the sort of the pear and friend banana, some not enjoying it as much. It's all about sort of trying and finding different ones. And any tasting notes, I should say as well, any tasting notes that you pick up that we haven't necessarily mentioned tonight, they're not wrong at all. There are no such things as wrong tasting notes. It's whatever kind of experience you have from it, whatever kind of memories it evokes or flavors it kind of jumps out to you as. Anything goes in that respect.
Yeah.
On that note, hopefully, are we all about ready for dram number 2?
I'm good. Good to go.
Yeah.
On to the Mac.
Take us away with the Mac.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the Mac now.
So this is a fantastic pick. This is Mac and Mac. This wee kitten here is actually Carl's kitten. Not that you can ever own a kitten or a cat. They're just part of the family and probably think that they're in charge. A couple of Macs there. So Mac is another one of our sort of entry level whiskies. This one comes in a little bit less in terms of pounds and pence than the Brooks. It's 40% ABV. It's designed to be, when Angela was sort of creating it, Angela D'Orazio, designed to be versatile. So either sip it neat, as we're going to this evening, but if you've got a bottle of it at home or you end up with one, it works so well in different cocktails and longer drinks. And I know that our colleague Mickey often mixes this in with various other spirits and cocktails that he does as well, Carl, on some of the shows that we've done. It's the first whiskey that's been completely created. All of the spirit was distilled at our Gravity Distillery. It was matured in American oak casks. So that American oak cask, white oak, lots of vanilla, sort of sweetness and caramels, and maybe a little bit of butterscotch here and there. Sweetness to it, but not sort of that sweetness that sticks to your teeth or anything, sort of off-putting for me at least anyway, like that. But this really does have, so our spirit character, we've said already, orchard fruits, warm spices. So you've got that sort of those fruity notes, orchard fruits, warm spices, and then mixed with vanillas and caramels. And for me, that pear that you mentioned earlier, Carl, just like pear fudge, I find it quite difficult often to like select and detect singular notes. I often like combine them because I can't detach it from one another. So pear fudge for me rather than pear and fudge. It feels like it's sort of blended together. Nice. Have you reviewed this one, Vin? I know that you've done quite a lot of our core range, but has this been in the mix?
Yeah, I've completed the core range now, which is awesome. And I have to say, right off the bat with the Mac, it was the first one I was expecting not to like, because when I read the brief about it, it's like marketed towards a more youthful audience, let's say, who might want to mix this whiskey. And straight away, I was kind of like, alarm bells. This is going to be something that isn't for me. And I went in with a kind of low expectations, let's say. Tried the thing, and I think this has got so much more to it than the kind of I don't know what the marketing on it's like now. I haven't looked at it in a year or so, but it's got more going for it than the marketing even lets on. It's just a really, really good whiskey.
Yeah.
And every tasting I've ever been on with this thing, it's astounded everybody about how good it really is.
Yeah, I think blind tastings just goes down incredibly well. I think that the marketing that you talked about, I think it's pretty much the same now, because it is sort of designed to. So it's meant to be. If we can have another picture of it up, please, Connor. It's meant to look attractive on a back bar as well. You know, sort of. But if we can all remember what bars and pubs are, but it's meant to to pop and look appealing back there, and to be. When we use the word versatile, at least as far as Mackmyra goes, we're talking about something that can be mixed with other things and will have something to give whatever it's gone into without losing too much of its presence and becoming sort of drowned in other ingredients. But for me, I sip this neat. I sip every now and then. I'll just pour a dram of this and have it as is. You have it with. We haven't touched on adding water to whiskey this evening so far, but I'd encourage everyone at home. Two things: you don't need to pour the entire 50 ml dram if you don't want to. You can always save a little bit, for the end and to come back to it. Second thing is feel free to add water if you wish. I tend to, in fact, I always do, almost as a rule. I'll drink something neat for the first time just to see how it's been presented to me. It's especially important, I think, when it's not, a single cask. If it's something that a master blender such as Angela or whoever it is has made. They've designed this, they've blended various different casks together, the recipe to present it that way. Always try it neat. It's like trying food without adding salt to it, in front of the chef, basically. And then I'll add water to taste. I'll start off with a drop. I might add a few more, and it could end up with a splash if I think it needs it for my own palate, my own personal profile. What about you, Carl? I think you had a drop or two here or there, do you not?
Yeah, so I'll add a drop or two. So depending on, I'll try sort of a whiskey as it is neat, and then maybe sort of add a drop or two as I kind of go on from that. I can see sort of a question down below as well that kind of popped up for us from Adrian. So good question. Yeah, are the American casks, oak casks imported from the States, or wood shipped, seasoned, or coopered in Sweden? So to my knowledge, they're as is, aren't they?
Yeah, so they're from the Bluegrass Cooperage, where we get our American oak casks from, and any ex-bourbons that we use as well. Bluegrass Cooperage, who supply Jack Daniels as well as a number of other big brands as well. So we get them shipped over, and they're shipped in a mixture of the whole cask, not being taken down to the States, and sometimes they're taken down to the States. I think it depends on how many being ordered and which particular cask were ordered from. But so these American oak ones, this is virgin American oak that we're using, so it's not been seasoned with anything. It's just as is. It'll be toasted. It'll be charred inside. Something you have to do with virgin oak. And when we say virgin oak, we're talking about something that's not had anything in it before. It's that fresh wood, basically. What we can see here is the inside of one of our cask ends from a particular cask of ours, a Gravity cask, named after the Gravity Distillery. This one is it's ex-bourbon staves. So you can see in the background the staves are ex-bourbon, and the top is Swedish Oak. And with that, we've charred the inside and also cut these grooves into it to try and to increase the surface area to liquid ratio, to encourage more interaction with the Swedish Oak in the end of it as well. There's an important technique. I think with virgin wood, you have to char or toast it, otherwise it's just sort of it's too much. It's got too many sort of tannins and things in there, even if it's white or American or European oak. So any notes coming through that I might have missed there, Carl? Is anyone getting fruits and spices?
So
or
we've seen a lot of pear drops.
Yeah.
You could see it in cocktails. So yeah, it's designed for mixologists originally, again to stand off the shelf for that sort of part of reason. But Vin's right in as much as saying, in a way, it would do it a disservice if you think of it as just something to be mixed. Like it's got enough of it by itself to drink on its own. So if it's in that price bracket as well, if you are looking to try something a little bit different, I think Japanese whiskey is one of the whiskeys that people are very curious about, particularly in sort of the younger demographic. But Japanese whiskey in itself has kind of slightly become prohibitive in terms of its accessibility cost-wise. Certainly in respect, in my opinion, in respect to the flavor profile it kind of gives you. So if you want to try something a little bit different, Swedish whiskey is kind of a great route to kind of get into, to have almost like a talking point, I guess, of that, rather than trying the usual Scotch, as it were. I could taste the virgin oak as I had organic Scotch before, and at the same vanilla to it and light in character. I get a little bit more. It's a little bit more intense sweetness for me on the Mac versus the Brooks. I don't know if anyone else gets that. It leans more towards the sugary kind of caramelly, fudgy sweet side for me personally.
Definitely. That's the cask. That's the cask influence, I think. And this, Vin, I know that you talk about different cask reviews before on your channel, but this is, I think, the most simple recipe that we have for any of our whiskies. Just one type of cask, and not 4 or 5 different things, and all the different sizes that we have in, and the influence that they have as well. Which do you prefer of the two? Because these are our sort of entry level ones. Anywhere in the £30 to £40 bracket. Which of these two do you think you'd reach for more often than not?
I mean, I have to say, for me, it's a bit of a coin flip, depending on my mood of the day. This one's a little less spicy, but a little bit more, I say viscous, it's got a bit more mouthfeel to it.
Yeah.
So I would say if I'm looking for something with a bit more interest to it, something that I want to spend a bit of time on, I'm probably going to hit the Brooks whiskey more often. If I want something that's like, if I'm just watching a film or I fancy a whiskey and I don't want to sit there like this while Spider-Man's doing his thing on the screen, then this will be the one I reach for. This will just be a nice casual whiskey that I'm definitely going to enjoy all the way through.
Yeah, completely fair shout.
Cole, what do you think? Well, we're allowed to say.
So with that, of the two, without literally aping off what Vince just said, there is a coin flip. Honestly, they're both easy drinking. They both got a little bit of sweetness. It will literally depend on what mood and which one. To be fair, which one's probably got more in the bottle, because you've got to watch the stock levels. So, if we're being completely honest,
that factors in to so much of my decision making when I'm looking at the shelf behind me and I'm thinking, what am I going to go for now? I think, well, I don't want to run out of this anytime soon. So I've got a bit more of it. There's probably a few people out there like that.
Yeah. So do you want to give us a little bit more about the distillery?
The Gravity Distillery. Well, yeah. So I've mentioned that this is the first whiskey that's been, all of it has been produced at the Gravity Distillery. So Gravity Distillery moved into in 2012, and if you haven't guessed from its name, Gravity is very much involved in the process with it. So 35 meters tall, 7 stories. The very top one, and we can just see the sort of the balcony there and the frame around the outside of it. 7th floor is our rooftop bar. Big balcony, as I mentioned, you can look out over the forest from. The floors, the 6 floors below are where the whiskey is made. So we have on the back of the distillery, we have 2 big silos where the barley, unmalted, sorry, it's all malted, unpeated and then peated in one and the other, gets taken to the top, to floor number 6, and then each floor on the way down is the next stage of the production process. So instead of using lots of energy pumping all your materials from one room to the next in a horizontal fashion, as most traditional distilleries would do, we use gravity from one floor on the way down. So we also use and capture heat just about every stage of the production process that generates it. We'll capture that heat, and it goes into this sort of closed circuit system that we have with our own little power station off to the side that uses it, collects it. It'll either be used to heat the offices that next door to the distillery, or power here or there, or it'll be sort of recycled back around and used to heat up other parts of the process as well. So it's not just saving energy, and your carbon footprint being reduced using the gravity. We've got very high tech systems that capture all of this and recycle it. Some of the energy that we need is generated. In fact, it's all generated from bio pellets, from biofuel. But the draff that we have that's left over, draff being like the leftover physical matter after you've got all your starch and everything out of your barley. Yeah. The husks and things that are left over. If anyone's been on a distillery tour in Scotland and you're told about these happy cows because the draff gets sent off to go into animal feed, just to debunk a thing that these cows are happy because they're being fed. They're not happy because the draff has alcohol in them. The alcohol hasn't been produced, hasn't been generated yet. So whilst they're not, they're not saying anything too bad. You know, the cows are happy, but they're not happy because they're drinking, you know, or eating, you know, boozy husks or anything. But we take that draft. Sorry, Carl.
I was going to say, Vin, I do apologise. This really sticks in his craw, this bit about the happy cows. Like
I think
he doesn't like the insinuation.
I felt so duped by it though, because I remember I started going to distillery tours. Maybe I think my first one was 2016. Talisker was my first one, and I'm not saying it was them that said it, but I've been to maybe 40, 45 different distilleries now, and I've heard this happy cow thing a fair few. And back in 2016, I came back home and I was saying about these happy cows, this and that, and then was told rather unceremoniously by someone who knew better that how wrong I was. So it's always stuck in my mind, that one. But anyway, I'll stop that digression and say, so our draft we send off to a facility that turns it into biofuel, into bio pellets that we then use to, you know, power the production and everything we have. So lots of things recycled, not just the heat, but the draft, everything that we can to bring it down. And from in our first year in the Gravity Distillery, we used 45% less energy than we did in the Brooks Distillery, which is just an enormous drop. That is just massive. Here we can see a profile of actually there. So you see the big green silos on the left, they do go all the way to the floor. But yeah, so it starts up on the 6th floor and then all the way down, you know, milling, mashing, fermentation, and then distilling, and then the ground floor being where we store all of the new make spirit. We are, to my knowledge, and I always say this now because I think that the world's sort of catching up, we're the only purpose-built gravity distillery in production today. There are distilleries around that use gravity here and there, you know, for, you know, sliding one thing to the next. I think Glenallachie may be one of them. And I know that in Edinburgh soon, in Edinburgh soon, I think in Leith, by the water is going to be, there's plans anyway for a purpose-built gravity distillery. And I think in 30, 40 years from now, there's going to be a few. It makes sense to do. It's good for the environment. You can make your whiskey exactly the same as you could in a traditional one, and, you know, saving power as well. Here we go. Yeah, Port Leith. Thank you, Jim. Yeah. So that's it. So I think, and I'm sure others will follow, and especially in urban areas, right? You know, like where you've got a small area to build your distillery on. If you can build it up, you know, why wouldn't you? Of course. So
it's like the rise of vertical farming is something that's sort of like you're seeing a lot more of that popping up now as well, which is a really interesting concept as well. Like stacks and stacks, and they can grow obviously with the lights and all the different hoo-has. It's not my sort of field of expertise, but you know, they can grow very efficiently, very quickly on such a small footprint. It's kind of the adaptation we've got to do, haven't we? So
I'd have thought it was your area of expertise when you described the tools as hoo-has. I thought he's got some technical knowledge.
It's a technical term, mate. Hoo-ha. That gets me out of a lot of difficult situations. That does. Oh yeah, it's the hoo-ha do icky.
Vin, have you ever been over to Sweden? Have you ever been to the distillery?
I've not been to the distillery. I went to Sweden a few years ago for work, actually, but I sadly couldn't go and visit anything. And this was long before my interest in whiskey, and certainly before the channel. Actually, it's something I don't admit to very often, but I've actually only been to about 4 Scottish distilleries in my time. Just lack of opportunity, really. I need to make some time and go up there. So I've kind of gone through all of my history with whiskey just here and trying things and getting my knowledge off the internet, basically.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, mate, come up with us on a road trip sometime, and we'd love to get you over to the distillery to Mackmyra as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to go on there. For me, my day job, I'm a technician and an engineer, so I really appreciate the engineering behind it. And I know a lot of people like whiskey because of the romance of the distilleries and whatnot. But for me, I'm into the nuts and bolts of things, so I would love to go over.
Yeah, I love it both. I think the mix from whiskey's always been the science and the engineering is such an important, but almost sort of like just tucked in the background side of it. But then, you know, the romance, the community, the history, like history in particular, is there. I've just seen a question actually. I don't know what popped up there, but from Phil. So I'll draw. Oh no, oh dear. But yeah, from Phil said, are they chill filtered? So the Mac is being, you know, less than 46% ABV. It's in that sort of territory where needs to be done, really, you know, as much as we don't want it to be. It is anything below 46%. generally speaking, you will find it being chill filtered. With the Brooks whiskey, where it's not chill filtered, that's sort of cool filtered, so not quite as low a temperature as you'd find from some other things. So that leaves some of the, some of those properties still present within it. It doesn't draw it all out. Chill filtration, for anyone that doesn't know about it, just a quick thing into it, is basically just trying to stop any haze forming in your bottle. If you see, if you can see the bottle of whiskey on the shelf or wherever it is, it's not sat in a box on a shelf. If you can see a haze in there, I think, just to be perfectly candid, consumers, you can be put off. If it's not, the clarity isn't there, just perfectly see through. No matter what the color is, it can put people off because we associate, this quality with clarity. So that's why it's done. But those are the only two in the range that are chill filtered in that way. Everything else that we have, everything else that we've released is all 46.1% ABV or above. So we don't do any of that to it at all.
Nice. Yeah, I've just seen in the comments as well. The CW, I think, is one of my mates. He's saying hire a camper van and do a tour of Scotland's distilleries. One of the things I did was convert a Ford Transit into a camper van, and we took sort of 4 of us up there. I had the unfortunate benefit of being on a couple of days being the designated driver. So I had to have a little driver's grant to take away with me. But yeah, it's a great way if there's a couple of you and someone who doesn't like whiskey, you get them to drive you around and you get through loads of distilleries. Yeah, highly recommend that.
So Mike just commented saying, do the whiskey trail, you do more than 4 in a day. There's lots of little pockets around Scotland, so I'm sure you're aware of this much anyway, but you can go to some of them, Speyside as well, and you can do 4 in the morning if you're feeling confident enough, I guess, and well fed.
Hopefully in the new world, Vin. Hopefully in the new world, maybe you'll get a chance to then. And on that, shall we move on to dram number 3?
That's it. Dram number 3. I think we're going to have. This is the one that we've brought Vin in, and he's given us his time to come and introduce. So I think what I'll probably do, Vin, is just sort of sit back and let you handle it however you like, and we'll take a moment off. I might just nip off for a bit. Yeah. But please take it away.
Sure. So we've now got the Mackmyra Grönt Te, and it's one of the few that I actually have a bottle of. I've got another one here, and it's of the I'm going to say Jacked Liquor, but I'm not sure of the pronunciation on that. You'll be able to tell me that later.
Yacht Liquor.
Yacht Liquor, yeah. So this one here, actually, Carl poured me my first serve of this when I met him in Birmingham in March last year. So I'm going to pop that. And I've just got a little bit of this left because this was my second bottle that I got through a club that I'm a member of.
Oh, Somerton Club. We can talk about them quite happily. We're definite friends of the Somerton Club, and Dan in particular. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, a long-standing member of that club as well. When I tried it, like as you said earlier, Rich, when you first heard of Mackmyra, you went up to them at stands, and it's one of the few distilleries that I go to when I go to a event that I'll go and be like, well, what have you got that's new? Because it's always good. Like I remember the first time I tried the Americans. I can't get the pronunciation is always bad. You know the one I mean. And that was astounding. I went to Carl, and Carl was like, "Well, to be fair, I think you were kind of new at the time, Carl." And you're like, "I'm kind of new, but I think this one's fairly good. Try this one." I thought, "Grönt tea, what's that mean? Green tea? I mean, I like green tea, but that sounds a bit weird. Go on then, I'll try a bit of that." And I thought, actually, as we get into it, on the nose, it's fairly typical. It's got a fairly typical nose on it. And as we get into it, you'll see the palate is just insane. It's so good. And I spent the rest of the festival meeting people that I know saying, have you tried this thing? You should go and try this thing. I bought a bottle of it soon after, reviewed it as normal. This was like March last year. And I do this thing on my blog, on my website, NoNonsenseWhisky.com, where every month I collate the information from all of my reviews that month, and I pick a favorite one of the month. Nothing too fancy. I just say, this is the one I liked the most. Doesn't have to be the best one. It's just the one I like the most. And this one won in March. And at the end of the year, I collated all 12 of those. And I was like, well, which one astounded me the most? And it was this one. So that's probably the reason why I'm talking about this today, is because it's my whiskey of the year 2020. Above all of the other things I try. I mean, for me, it's not about cost or even the best whiskey. I mean, I tried some things that were like 60 years old last year. That's not going to win my whiskey of the year because nobody else is going to get to try that. This thing here is just fantastic, and it's one of those things where you read into it, you read what actually went into it, which in this case was some Oloroso casks, some bourbon casks, some Swedish Oak, and then this kind of weird saturation of green tea. And there's 4 green teas, but I think you guys are going to do the pronunciations of those, so I don't have to. And that's how they kind of saturated this thing. Now, the thing that people always say to me when I talk about this one, I enthuse about it quite a lot, is it doesn't smell or taste like green tea. But for me, if you're thinking about green tea as the stuff you get in Asda or Tesco's, that isn't what this green tea is. If you've had some proper Japanese green tea that's been made at 60, 80 degrees, and it's only been stewed for a minute or 2, that's when you get these really subtle tea notes that are coming out in this. So I think I've talked enough about that. If you want to get the nose and see what... I mean, I love this drum.
Yeah. I didn't know that you two met at that festival as well. I've just seen in the comment as well. Another friend of Mackmyra, Carl, who I think might be talking about you, Vin, maybe, or if you told him to go and try the Grönt Te. So Carl and I started at about the same time. So I think we started sort of at the very end of February for me, beginning of March. I don't know when your first shift was, Carl, but
I think I did a show sort of tail end of 2019, but it was again, it's very sporadic. I've actually done more with Mackmyra since we've been stuck inside, to be fair. But I do remember that show with me and Ben. And it was a really good show, really, really fun, loads of energy in the room. There wasn't a lot of different stands in terms of all the shows I've kind of attended and sort of worked in the past. So it was a busy day. I was I got porous cramp at the end of it, a bit of RSI coming through. Again, this is one that people found so interesting. And I had to sort of keep jumping back into it as well myself. It was like it is very, very unique. And hopefully, if you guys are sort of trying it out there tonight, you'll get some of that kind of unique element and maybe pick out some of those sort of green tea notes.
So we were talking about orchard fruits in the previous two, and that being a theme throughout. Here I can get specifically, which I can't often do, but specifically like green apple, sort of like fresh green apple, perfectly ripe green apple on the palate and the nose. And what you said as well, Vin, about I think you hit the nail on the head, really. If you put your nose in it, you think, where's the green tea in this? For any green tea fans out there, of which I am one. However, I've realised since, and I think it was actually watching your channel, I have to confess, when you talked about the green tea side of it, as you did then, I thought, oh, maybe I'm not as big a green tea fan as I thought, because I've never taken the time to put some green tea on the hob and get it to 60 degrees, 70 degrees, leave it for a minute and then do it. There's 4 different green teas have gone into it. Yep. You said about the saturated cask. So ex-bourbon, Swedish Oak, American Oak casks have gone into it of various different sizes, which is important. But then the green tea casks, people don't age green tea in casks. So how do you get a green tea cask? We had to make them ourselves. Quite briny, I'll take that actually. Yeah, for sure. I'll call you the Phantom for your name. I'm sure it's probably not what you go by on the street. But yeah, so how do you get a green tea cask? So Angela set out probably about 3.5, 4 years ago, before this was released, because it was in the pipeline for a very long time. Most master blenders, there's not just whiskey that they're into. It's any sort of sensory experience, be it coffee or food, or in Angela's case, green tea, and in particular Japanese green tea. She knew she wanted to set out to have a green tea whiskey. Nobody else has ever done that sort of thing. We're not inhibited, and I use that word correctly, but lightly as well, by the rules in Scotland and the SWA about the what you can and can't do, what casks you can and can't use. We don't have those rules in Sweden. We stay respectful of the rules are followed, but beyond that, we can do what we like. So she had to work out how to make green tea casks. She took the 4 different green teas, and I'm going to read them off of a thing that I've got here, because I can. I was hoping you're going to recite them. Do you think I was going? Well, I could have just sort of pretended, but yeah. So for any green tea fans out there, listen up. This is what we've got. So 4 green teas gone into it. Yami Sencha, which gives a rich and sort of soft, sweet green tea with a deep taste. Yami Gyokuro, sort of an elegant and sophisticated tea with a lot of sweetness and umami, that sort of texture, flavour. Koribo Hojika, sort of nutty and delicate tea, and then Yami Matcha Shinobi, which sort of with some rich flavors to it as well. But she's taken those. Oh, just very quickly while we've got that picture up, that's not how we got the green tea into the whiskey. That tea bag in the bottle caused a great deal of confusion amongst people about how we got green tea in there. So what you're seeing in front of it, you can see the 4 green teas sort of laid out in a little pile in front. So how do you get it into the cask? I'll get to it now. Finally, we took some Ex-Oloroso casks. And then we took some neutral grain spirit, which is basically the precursor to vodka before it's watered down. So 95-96% ABV, made from Swedish grains. And instead of we use that to then put the green tea in and macerate it, like you would do with botanicals in gin, to try and get that flavour into the liquid, and then get the liquid then into the wood and into the cask. But instead of watering it down to an ABV where it wouldn't just destroy the tea, you put tea or something delicate into something that's 95% alcohol. It's going to just eviscerate it, for want of a better term. But so to water it down, instead of using water as people normally do, Angela thought we'll use Oloroso to do it. So to brought it down to, I think, 65-70% ABV. And then put the green tea individually into different casks. So we split the teas up and infused the tea then into it. So there was a lot of, mechanics going into it, a bit of engineering, a bit of thought about how to actually create it. It wasn't just we bought some casks and thought that'd be a great idea. We've created this from scratch. The idea itself, as well as actually the technique, I suppose, of doing it.
I say Rohan Relaxer there saying in the comments before you even mentioned the sort of the essential neutral green spirit and going into Oloroso casks. Are you imagining things? No, I don't think so. I think if you can pick it up, cool, you can pick it up. Trust your own palate. If you like it, that's all you need to know. If you like it, yes. If you don't, move on. But yeah, I think whether or not it's sort of psychological from my perspective as well, but I definitely notice there's a little bit of richness in there that I could liken to Oloroso sherry. Not quite that sort of deep bitterness that you get on like a really heavy, let's say Glendronach or whatever it is. But I think there's a nod of it in there, and I think matcha as well is one of the notes that sort of popped up quite a bit in terms of when you're trying to pick out the green teas. I think the kind of slight earthiness, almost meatiness of matcha, I think is one that's quite detectable in that respect. Yeah,
I think Jim, coming there from Jim Cole, saying about subtle white pepper spiciness. I think that may well be in the official tasting notes. I think white pepper we've got in there. And that's something that people find all the time. As Carl said, there's no wrong answers. If you find something in there, it's all so subjective. If you find it and you think it's there, it absolutely is. But also at the same time, I think it's always nice. I don't know if I'm just speaking for myself, when you come up with a note and then other people say, yeah, no, I get that too. So Jim, yeah, very much white pepper. Definitely, people find that quite often.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah,
absolutely. For me, that pepperiness comes down the side of my tongue once the liquid's gone, and I can still feel the tingling now. So for me, it's so far as well. I mean, it's probably not fair to judge this against the core range, to be honest, because I think this is clearly going to be my favourite of the day, even though I really do love these next two as well. Yeah. But it's got this extra layer of depth to it that does come out with these kind of seasonal releases, these special releases. And I think something like this green tea, which is still around, it's available to get. I know a few people started purchasing it after I mentioned it on my channel. Yeah. But I absolutely, this is one of the ones I absolutely recommend to people. If you want to get an idea about what Mackmyra is and what they want to do, the innovation they want to bring to whiskey, then you can't go much wrong with getting the Grönt Te, I have to say.
I think it's us in a nutshell. I think it's innovation and good whiskey, like in one bottle. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this bottle I got here, this was my backup. I opened it because it was my whiskey of the year. This is going to get hidden in the back of my cabinet so that I don't reach for it every single day. I would.
How about on a time lock or something like that?
Yeah, literally, like once a week tops, and it's still going to be gone. When it disappears, it's going to be the first time I've been sad about an end of a bottle in a long time.
Yeah, a lot of love for this in the comments as well. So, we obviously say everything is subjective in terms of taste, but clearly your taste isn't too far off, Vin, judging on the basis of what people are saying in the comments tonight. So yeah, a lot of love for it. I saw one note about a whiff of Play-Doh after resting it for a while.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I guess potentially the sort of slightly oily kind of richness to it potentially is playing into that. I don't know. I don't really had Play-Doh as a kid, to be fair.
Oh, well, I mean, you're an adult now. You can buy all the Play-Doh you want.
I don't have a kid though, do I? So that would be my excuse for buying Play-Doh.
No, when you've grown up, you can do it. You can eat a birthday cake for dinner if you like. All the things you wanted to do as a kid, you can just go and do now.
That is fair.
That's
fair. But yes, I should remind everyone as well that remember we are doing a giveaway at the end of the evening. So we are giving away a T-shirt and a mug to whoever gets the answer right fastest, and whoever comes up second is just getting a mug. So hope you're paying attention, and we'll say no more on that, shall we? I should say as well, if you're not already, sort of, I'm having a little glass of water and a little bit of water in between each drum, just to kind of reset my palate a little bit. You probably hear a lot of people saying about palate resetting. Some people use dark chocolate. Some use sort of black coffee as a way to kind of reset the palate as well. A little bit of water for me. It's fine to kind of rinse out the glass and have a little drum. And yeah, nice. Ordered already. All the like.
This comment from Mike, I was actually thanks for writing this in. I was actually about to ask before we moved on to the next dram. I was going to find out and just see what people thought, where their expectations were going in. Did people know what Grönt Te was? And they know it was a green tea, whiskey going in. And Mike said, thought it was the one he'd like the least. Surprised, strong whiskey nose, bit of smoke, ginger, clove, cinnamon, and other spices. Hopefully this is one that you like. I know that when we opened up, the Brooks might not have been for you, Mike, but hopefully now. I will say this is this is the first whiskey that came out when I joined. I was on hello Eleanor joined us, Ellen from the Glasgow Distillery, 1770. I think people know. Anyone from the Somerton Whiskey Club will definitely know who they are now. And also, who are the pouch? I've had a pouch turned up from you, Eleanor. The peated whiskey me, that's it. Which I'm looking forward to getting stuck into. I know Mickey loves that peated one.
I should say as well.
Go
sorry,
on.
I was just going to say just quickly. I don't want to worry you, Phil. Don't worry. I didn't have Play-Doh as a kid, but I had plenty of Scale Electric. Scale Electric and Master System 2 was pretty much my jam, and that got me through a lot of years. So yeah, I was all right.
Green tea. I thought when it came out, I thought, oh, this is bold. What a bold bonkers thing. I liked Mackmyra before joining. I think when the Microsoft and Mackmyra AI whiskey came out in the latter part of 2019, that for me made me think, I don't know, just made me want to come and work here, made me want to try and get a job or at least to drink more of it. But when the green tea came out, something about it, I just thought, is that too much? Is that sort of a step too far in the innovation side of it? But then when I tried it, I was just my expectations, like you with the Mac, I think, Vin, your expectations are managed and relatively low. And with Mike, you think, not for me, but then you try it. I first saw this introduced at Milroy's of Soho. I was there on one of my sort of training days, and Shane Perry, our manager, was behind the bar doing a tasting for everyone. He did a core range tasting with, I think, the previous seasonal, which was the Skurdeted or Hurdeted. And then we had some samples of these as well, and we poured a green tea for everyone afterwards and took votes. And overwhelmingly, I think there was about 20-25 people in there, perhaps. I think 17-18 people put green tea as their favourite of the night. I think that it just has that impact. It's fresh, it's accessible, it's got that bit of spice to it, but it's not too much. You can have it without water, with something you can definitely have without, but add water to it to your taste, obviously. But a very surprising whiskey, I think, in summary.
Definitely. I mean, when I ummed and ahed about what to put as my whiskey of the year, it was between probably 3 or 4 different whiskies that were really close. And when I thought, do you know what, I'm going to do the Grönt Te, when I put the article out there, I was terrified. I was going to get this weird backlash about people going, what the hell is this? But the response has been really good. Anyone who's tried it was like, fair shout. That is a great whiskey. And anyone who hasn't tried it has gone, do you know what, I'm going to give it a go now. And so you should. I mean, even if you want to just get a sample of it, like these little tasting set things here are brilliant. Like, luckily I've got a bottle, so I've got a spare one now. But I think that, give it a go. It sounds weird, but it really isn't. It's just good. Yeah, it's just good.
That's it. Yeah, that'll do. I think that's it. Let's leave it on that and move on to dram number 4. It's just it's just good. I think is perfect. I think that'll do. But yeah, I think that's time. Hopefully not rushing anyone at home. That's probably just about enough time to get through a dram there. So, Carl, if you would please introduce us to dram number 4.
Yeah. So number 4, we're going to go to the Svens Ek. I'm not sure if we touched on it with the previous one as well, but with the Grönt Te, the Svens Ek, and I believe as well the Svens Oak, which we're doing last as well. We're jumping up to Angela's magic number of 46.1 as well. So we are having a bit of a jump up in terms of ABV as well. So they are a bit bigger, richer, stronger. Certainly as you go up in the alcohol level, you should hopefully detect that there's a little bit more depth to them on that basis. I'm not quite sure why the 0.1, to be honest with you, but it's a nice little unique selling point, isn't it? She hasn't told us particularly why, but yeah, it's the 0.1. The 0.1 makes a difference, believe me.
Why not? That's what I would say. Why not?
Exactly. Yeah, 46 boring. That's old news. Let's get 0.1 in there. So this one's matured in ex-bourbon barrels, and then 10% of the liquid in the Svens Ek is transferred into Swedish Oak cask for around 18 months. So Svens Ek literally translates to Swedish Oak. So that's why we've literally called that it. So instantly, if you want to have a little nose on this one, actually, you should hopefully pick up straight away. We're in sort of different territory as well with the other ones. You should pick up some of that sort of spiciness in there, that kind of deep richness, possibly a little bit of chocolatiness in there as well. But yeah, so the reason why we only do sort of 10% of this in Swedish Oak is because that's all it needs. That 18 months imparts such a strong flavour on it that any longer, and you're going to sort of overpower the liquid. So again, balance is one of the key things we're looking at with Svens Ek. So in terms of the official tasting notes, you got things like it's fruity, citrus, there's apple, pear, oakiness is one of the things that comes out, and also toasted bread. So I get that, so that kind of slightly yeasty, sort of freshly risen bread kind of thing. I get it in there. And then on the palate.
Skull.
So spicy, sandalwood, dry ginger, fruity. And then it goes into sweetness. There's caramel, there's honey in there. And then on the finish, simply listed as balanced with dark chocolate. So for me, I get a little kind of drying sensation, and then the chocolate starts to sort of slightly emerge for me. Vin, what about you, mate? What do you get on Svens Ek?
Definitely. I mean, so far in the drams we've tried the lighter side of Mackmyra. Now we're getting into the kind of darker, earthier side of Mackmyra. For me, we often talk about the tannins in whiskey that comes from like a virgin oak cask, a real oaky influence. I get in this in absolute spades. You know, this is like for me, this is like being, dare I say, in like almost like a forest setting, like being out in that kind of like just after a rainfall, that kind of this is a weird tasting note, but you know, like that kind of dank, kind of mossiness. That's an earthy feeling to it. That's what I get from this, but not like it's not overpowering. It's just part of it.
Yeah, it's not
but a peaty. An extra layer, a bit of extra depth to it than the previous two, the first two of the core range. That I think for me, this is one of those ones where I really want to spend some time with it.
It's a bit more robust than the other one. That's why, as you said at the beginning, you know, when you made the comparison, Vin, and some people in the comments about, you know, Lowland Speyside perhaps for the first two. I'm not sure where you could really fit the green tea into that. Maybe we'll talk about it in a minute. But the Svens Ek, for me, that's where it gets a little bit heavier, a bit richer. You know, looking closer towards, you know, Campbelltown, West Coast. You know, Campbelltown Highlands, West Coast sort of feel. At least in terms of mouthfeel. I'm not talking about, you know, flavour and profile necessarily, but the feeling that you get from it, I think a bit more for that for me. I saw someone say a bit drying at the end, I think from Callum, a subsequent comment of his. Add a drop of water, Callum. I think that unless you're keen on you know, a bit of drying thing at the end, but that the bitter notes and things that you can get from the Swedish Oak influence, we'll be doing that and help with it. The tannins and things that are present in there. I'll say as far as when we say bitter, you know, not sort of bitter to me. I don't know, maybe it's because I've got a sweet tooth, but bitter to me sounds half off-putting sometimes. But it's about, as Carl said, it's about having a bit of balance. You know, balancing out some of the sweetness and things with it. And if you consider, or you know, think about dark chocolate, that's a a bit that's bitter compared to milk.
Yeah.
So when I say bitter, that's the sort of thing that I'm thinking about, rather than something that makes you wince, or just on the bittery side of things, a bit further in the scale. Katsu curry, no, that's brilliant.
Do you know what? I've not had a katsu curry in ages, but
sorry, Carl.
No, go on, mate. You were going to say sorry.
I was just going to say about the katsu curry. I actually agree with that a lot, because if you make that properly, then you're putting in some very, very tasty apples into that sauce as well, and so that brings us back to that kind of that appley note that's just with a bit of extra something to it.
Oh, see, I'm learning stuff today, because I like katsu curry, but I've never made it. Same as the way, green tea. I thought I was a green tea fan until I listened to you, and now I'm realising I'm not even a katsu curry fan, because I didn't know that apple went into it. So, news to me. Thanks.
Cocktails with Lisa's comment about like a boozy cinnamon bun. I get that. I get there's like, obviously we've got the 46.1, so you're getting a bit of that booziness in there, but also the cinnamon bun, that's sort of slightly spicy, slightly sweet. Maybe the toasted bread is giving the bun element to it. I agree with that. If you are enjoying the show tonight as well, guys, please drop us a like down below on whatever platform you're on. Make sure you give Vin a follow as well. That'd be good. We do have a lot of content on our YouTube channel as well. We're not trying to compete with Vin for subscribers. We've got a bit of a way to go, but we'll come at him. So we've got loads of videos on YouTube. We've done a load of these shows over lockdown. If you watch any of the earlier stuff as well, back in March, April, May, you can literally see the development of it, trying to hone our skills on screen as we try and figure out this new world that we're in now. We've got shows coming up tomorrow. We've got a show on Monday as well. We'll go through them all at the end of this show. But please drop us a like and a sub with notifications on. We've got loads of content to get you through lockdown 3. Hopefully the last of the lockdowns. But
Well, let's see. I was laughing, Carl, when you said about you can watch us sort of honing our skills. I mentioned Carl and I joined, at least myself and Carl, you've done a little bit before, but we really started working in earnest with Mackmyra February, March, and everyone knows what happened in the last sort of week or so of March. So we only got to, at least in my case, to leave the house 5 or 6 times, and then all of a sudden we've got to do everything online, and I'm still trying to get used to everything, and really I was enthusiastic and a fan of Mackmyra before joining, but I didn't know enough to sort of sit and deliver monologues full of information about things, or to interact and ask questions, answer questions, from people. So we really have. It's been a steep learning curve. We were dropped right in at the deep end for it. I saw there was a question from Adrian Carr about are all the core range changing the Bodas mines? Yes. So just about everything that we have released in the past, but certainly everything in the last few years, everything is matured down in the Bodas mines for our commercial releases. The other warehouses that I've spoken of, so the Fjordlahorna island, which is part of the Swedish, it's part of the Stockholm sort of archipelago, just series of islands around the city. That is somewhere where we have private casks, where cask owners, we sell lots of 30-litre casks, can have it, or on top of the mountain. Interesting, that island I just mentioned is that warehouse is built into like a big hollowed out rock that used to store munitions and torpedoes and things over the years. And now we use it to store whiskey, and I think that's awesome. So if you do buy a 30-litre cask from us, you can pop over on the plane to Stockholm, just get a little ferry over to that island and go and see a cask and read it a poem, sing it a song, give it a pat on the back or something. But the other warehouses I mentioned on top of the mountain, we've got a tiny little warehouse cafe sort of above it. You can go skiing all around it, and then the warehouse is sort of underneath. It's only about 6 or 7 meters, I think, in diameter. So a very small little place. And then a forest warehouse at the distillery itself. And then we've got warehouses in Germany and 2 or 3 more in Sweden as well. But everything that we're drinking tonight has been matured down in the Bodas mines, in this big, disused sort of 19th century iron ore mine, which we've converted for our own purposes. And the Angel Share, you can imagine, underground, dense with whiskey. So Carl, this is Swedish Oak.
Yes.
Can you tell us and everyone sort of watching a little bit about Swedish Oak, because it is very different to other oak that is available?
Yeah, definitely. So hopefully, again, I can see some of the comments you're all enjoying this as you kind of go. So yeah, it's one to kind of keep coming back to. And like I say, if you are adding a little bit of water to it as well, I recommend doing that, sort of open it up a little bit. If you haven't got a pipette, if you've got a clean finger, that's a good way to sort of get a drop or two in there as well. I like to do it that way. But yeah, Swedish Oak. So why Swedish Oak? It fits into our ethos of trying to integrate and ingratiate everything kind of wholly Swedish and being quintessentially Swedish. But also one of the key characteristics about Swedish oak is that it grows differently to other oaks, so sort of like North American oak, for example. And part of that is down to the climate. So it grows from a very, very harsh climate. So it grows very tall, very straight. There's few branches in terms of sort of big root branches coming off it. So it makes it easier for cask making. Because if anyone knows, sort of like knots aren't great for casks, it causes a lot of leaking and porousness. And basically, it's because it grows in a harsher climate, it features less wood sugars. So you got less. The technical term is xylose and lignin as part of the cask makeup as well. So what that sort of dials down versus North American oak is things like, let's say, butterscotch, caramel, vanilla, those kind of things which are prevalent in bourbons, shall we say. And you get more of that kind of sandalwood, pepper, ginger, those kind of spicier notes kind of coming through. And hopefully you're detecting that when you're drinking this dram tonight. It is very powerful on its influence because, like I say, only 10% of this cask recipe is from Swedish oak cask. So that's been in for 18 months as well. So if you imagine if we did it any longer than that, how much more sort of aggressive potentially that particular flavor profile would be. It is actually one of the options you can have. You can have now Swedish oak cask if you wanted to buy yourself a 30-litre cask, which you can do through us, and you want to have it just all spend its entire life in Swedish oak cask, you can do that. And that definitely would give you a very, very interesting dram.
But basically ready more quickly as well, because of how sort of intensive, that maturation will be. Just all the properties you've talked about now. Instead of waiting for a 30-litre cask, you wait for 5 or 6 years, perhaps, for an ex-bourbon to be ready, something like that. To be really good and a smaller cask is going to mature and develop whiskey more quickly because it's greater surface ratio, etc. But this Swedish oak cask could be ready in as quick as 3 or 4 years. Yeah,
100%. And so just a little bit on the Swedish oak sort of history, which I think is quite interesting. If you caught us on any of our previous tasting, we talked a little bit about this before, but oak has been around. It's quite abundant, sort of different spots around the world. It's got different variations and varieties of it, different species, and they all have their own very different characteristics. So there's been Swedish oak in Sweden for quite some time, but there was a real sort of boom in Swedish oak growth because back in around the 1830s, the King of Sweden, in his wisdom, decided that we're going to need some more oak to build warships. So he commissioned an emissary to go out and find a great spot to plant a load of oak trees. And we found this lovely little island called Visingsö Island where we planted a load of oak trees with the intention of using them once they'd grown and fully matured to turn it into oak beams for ships, which was a great idea at the time. Slight problem to that is that we had ourselves an industrial revolution in the meantime. So by the time it came to harvest these trees, and he comes down and he goes, right, we've got a load of these trees ready. They're all fully grown. Going to build your ships, yeah? No, mate, we're doing them out of metal now. Thanks for that. So you got all these trees, like, what can we do with them? But never fear. There's a little known company that's from Sweden that makes furniture. So you can use Swedish oak for furniture. It's great for laminate flooring and hardwood flooring, and obviously in our instance it's good for Swedish oak casts as well. So there's plenty of uses for it, and more trees in the world certainly this time is never a bad thing. So I just thought that was a nice little tidbit of information around sort of Swedish oak.
I love that bit. I think it can take 150 years plus for European oak to be ready to be harvested, whereas American oak you're looking at 75, 80 years perhaps. European oak a lot longer. Swedish, you can put another decade or two on top of it. But it was only 30 years after they were planted that the technology was basically obsolete. As you said, the first ironclad ships started sailing, I think, in the early 1860s. Oh, really? They started planting these oak trees in the 1830s. So they were borderline saplings at the time of their being sort of redundant for their original use, at least of planting. There's plenty of use for trees, and the more trees the merrier in the world, of course. But yeah, 30 years after they're planted and they were, no more use for them into ships. I think it's just it's funny, and I don't know. Maybe it's not that funny. I thought it was funny. I think
Well, Vin's a third party. Is that an interesting little tidbit for you?
I like it. It's like what you were saying earlier about the stories about whether you know if they're true or not. And a lot of these whiskey stories are brilliant. My favorite story is about the Elijah Craig bourbon, and the idea behind that was that it was a priest who wanted to keep his illicit bourbon away from everyone else, and all he had was fish barrels. And tried to use the fish barrels, and obviously didn't work. So then he burnt out the inside of the casks to get rid of the fish smell, and then created this whole ethos of charring your cask. And that's supposed to be the origin story of that, but it's probably a load of bull. But it's a great story, and I tell it.
Yeah, well, it can be both things, I suppose. Because if he'd never seen anyone do it before, then he's doing it for the first time, as far as he's concerned. I guess But I do think that is a good idea. I think I can see why he came to the conclusion it might be good to sort of burn the inside of the host cask. I can't think of anything worse. And every now and then, I know that I can't detect it too often, but I know people that can. You can find a little bit of smoked salmon sometimes in certain whiskies, in certain Scotch. Again, I haven't found that myself, but I see that, tasting that every now and then. However, I'm not sure I'd be in an enormous rush to try something from a fish cask, I have to say. Whiskey. I don't know if that would be. I mean, maybe I'm just looking at it. People probably said it about the green tea. Oh, have you tried some?
Yeah, there's a company, I think Germany, and they're called like Terrible Cask, or I can't remember the name of it. It's like Stupid Cask or something like that. And they made one called Fishki, and I tried it in a blind tasting between that and something else, and it was like, so this is they put a Bruichladdich new make into it, or a previously aged one into it. And I had no idea that I was drinking this, by the way, at the time. Yeah. And when I told the guy, I was like, this one here is way better than the other one you gave me. And he was like, yeah, that's aged in a fish barrel, my friend. And I was like, well, apparently I like that. So fair play to them.
Yeah. But again, that highlights the importance of, like, if you like it, cool. Like, if you don't, move on to the next one. I think that ties in with sort of Mike's comment. I don't think he's too keen on the juniper side of things. Gives an answer again, and someone else has commented against that. They say they like that personally. Again, it's all down to personal preference. So don't worry, guys, if you don't like every single whiskey tonight. It's hopefully designed to give you a bit of a journey through what we've got, I guess, in terms of our core range, and a little touch of our seasonal as well. Hopefully, you got something in there you do like, but if you don't like them all, then it's cool. Honestly, it's part of the experience, and hopefully, like you said, with some of them stories as well, I think it adds to the tasting, adds to the flavor, the kind of inclusive nature. Like, for me, whiskey is a very social drink. It's designed to be enjoyed in this world anyway, this kind of environment where you can have a bit of back and forth, and you can talk about what you get or what you don't get. So that's one of the reasons I like it personally.
I think that these virtual tastings as well, or any sort of tasting you go on, you said about you don't have to like them all. It's just part of the journey. You've got to try a few things, and even if you find one that you like, that's one that you might then get. You don't have to like all of them. It's great if you do. But you don't have to. I think before we move on to the Svenska look, because it looks like some people might be on the smoky whiskey now. I say there's two philosophies that I subscribe to, and that's there's only one right way to drink whiskey, and that's however you want to drink it. And then there's a good whiskey. The second one, a good whiskey, is a whiskey you like to drink. Whether that whiskey is, Vin, you tried a 60-year-old last year. You've said if it's 60-year-old single malt and a single cask from somewhere, or if it's, a 3-litre bottle that's suspended upside down behind a pub, behind a bar in a pub. If that's a whiskey you like, it doesn't matter what everybody thinks about things. If you think it's a good whiskey and you like to drink it, it makes it a good whiskey. Yeah. And that's it. But on that note, let's move on to the Svenska look.
Yeah. I originally didn't pick up on that. When I saw the juniper, I thought, well, everyone gets their own notes. That's fair enough. But juniper makes sense. So, Mike, you're jumping ahead a little bit there, mate. We'll let it slide because we're friends. But, yeah.
That's probably I'd say that's someone that's gone through their entire 50 mil Svenska and just thought, right, I'm going on to the next now. They've been talking too much.
They've been talking too long. So, yeah, do you want to take it away, Rich? Take us through the Svenska look.
So, Svenska look, this is one of the ones that when I first found Mackmyra in 2018, as we talked about, this is one of the ones that turned me on to the brand and got my attention. So another one that's 46.1% ABV. And this is, if for everyone who's poured it and knows it now, you'll probably notice almost instantly, this is our smoky dram. This is our peaty dram, at least of the evening. We do have another that you can buy the bottle, and then casks are available as well. I'll see some positive comments coming in already. We often find that people really respond well to this. And Mark Taylor, hello Mark, thank you for joining us. Saying he runs regular tastings. I've been lucky enough to be there for some of those. The only one where a bulk of people like all of the expressions tasting. Oh, for Mackmyra, overall. Mark, I know Mark likes drinking it himself and his partner as well. I know big fans. So, yeah, thanks for the comment as well. Good one to read out, I'd say, towards the end of the night, that's for sure. But yeah, so this is our smoky dram. For people who don't know how you get a smoky whiskey, very quickly, it's to stop your barley from malting too far at the very beginning of the process before you start putting it through. You're adding it to liquids and things. You need to stop that. You need to dry it and heat it and dry it. So traditionally, you'd use, wherever you were, your distillery was, you'd use whatever heat source you had available to you. In lots of parts of the world, and Scotland in particular, that heat source was peat, which is basically immature coal, very, very immature coal. Compressed, decaying, to use that word, but decaying sort of bioorganisms. And wherever you are in the world, whatever region you are, whatever plant matter has been there will have an influence on that flavour. But anyway, so you use that as your heat source to dry that barley out. And whilst you're doing that, you're infusing smoke into that barley, and that flavour then carries through the entire process from that point on. Now, what we do, something that's slightly different, I said at the very beginning, one of the things that our founders set out to achieve was to keep it Swedish. We didn't just want to be another Scottish distillery that happened to be in another country. We wanted something that we were the first people to make single malt whiskey in Sweden. There are now a number of distilleries around, some really good ones too, but we were the first. So they wanted to set a precedent, basically, or try and start a tradition. They saw it as their responsibility to do. So what can you do that's different? What can you really change while still respecting the tradition, without changing things too drastically? For thousands of years across Scandinavia, they've used dried juniper twigs, juniper branches, in their sort of curing process. So, getting meat and fish ready for the long, cold, hard Swedish winters. They'll put juniper branches in there to add a bit of flavour into that meat, to infuse some flavour in. So that's what we did. The first sort of peating runs that we did, there are a number of different ingredients we tried, but this is the one that worked the best. So that's what we do. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but we'll get into sort of tasting notes with it. And actually, I'll probably pick my glass up and have a go. Casks that have gone into this. So you've got American oak, Swedish oak, ex-bourbon, Oloroso casks. So 4 different types of casks, but they're all small in size, so between 30 and 128 litres. So quite intensive maturations that you can have. And before we dive into the notes, and I hand over to you guys, perhaps I just need to address Callum's question there. So why don't Mackmyra put age statements on the whiskies? It's something that we've never done. I think we've got one limited edition that came out with our 10-year-old. But everything else we've done has been no age statement whiskies. Now, Carl mentioned earlier, I believe, we look for balance and flavour profile. I've just reeled off 4 different cask types that have gone into this, different cask sizes and things as well. So Angela's, what she sets out to do is to try and create a flavour rather than try and create something that can be put onto the box to try and make people buy it more, which is why it's so important for us to do all these tastings, Carl, right? To get people exactly trying it, because if you haven't got a number on the bottle, especially, and I don't mean this unkindly in any way, but especially if you're on the newer side to whiskey perhaps, and you think that the older the whiskey is, the better it is, which I think once you start learning, eventually that's not always the case necessarily at all. We're a flavour-led distillery. Very convenient argument to make for someone who works for a company that doesn't use age statements to talk about how they don't necessarily mean quality in a product, but it is true. It is true. If you like the whiskey that you're drinking, then it's a good whiskey, right? As I mentioned a moment ago. And also another thing that if you put 12 years old, for example, on your bottle, on your packaging, wherever it is, that means that the person, Angela, in our instance, the person making that whiskey and trying to create something to release, you limit them to anything. They can't use anything younger than 12 years old. So it has to. So it's almost like taking certain paints or certain colors away from an artist. So they can only use half of the palette because you can't put anything younger than that whiskey in there. So if you're a master blender and you think this is a brilliant whiskey, but what it could really do with it's a bit too robust, maybe it could do with something a bit younger to go in just to balance it out. If you have an age statement on there, you can't do it and you're limited. So for us, when we began, we didn't have them because we were releasing young whiskies and things at the time, and it's just something that we've continued doing. So I hope that answers your question, Callum, anyway. But in a nutshell, flavour led is sort of why we don't use them. So notes, what are you guys finding? Vin, what have you got now?
I mean, for me, out of the core range, by a long shot, this is my favourite. I'm a big fan of peat these days. That's been a long, hard-fought journey. When I first started my channel, even I didn't like peat, so I had to kind of force my way through it. But for me, this one it retains everything about the Mackmyra core range. It's like the Brooks whiskey. It's got a sweetness in there as well. Sweetness mixed in with smoke, but for me, it's not overly medicinal. It doesn't err on the side of like Lafroig's or something like that. If I was going to compare it to something, it'd probably be more on the lines of like a Kalila or something like that. A little lighter, a little less ashy. Something I like to do on my channel, which is some call it a bit pretentious, I guess, but I like to liken the smoke that I'm getting to the stages of a bonfire. So you have like. When the fire is raging, you don't really get much smoke, but you're getting the heat. This isn't that. Then you've got like towards the end, the embers are dying down. It's still a little bit of flames and you're getting some smoke. This is where this comes in. And then you've got stuff like Lafroig, which is like the day after the fire went out and it's just ash and dirt, that kind of thing.
A little bit wet as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for me, this is kind of like standing by the bonfire, drinking the dram, but the bonfire's dying down a bit. It's the end of the evening, that kind of thing. That's where I'm getting the smoke from this.
Campfire in the rain is every tasting I've ever done with this. I've said so before I joined. I was part of a tweet tasting. If you know, it's from Steve Rush, the Whiskey Wire. I was selected, or luckily. For a Mackmyra tasting, and this was part of it. And I had a friend of mine around at the time because it was back in the day when that was still allowed and permissible. And he described it as campfire in the rain. So it's got like a wetness to the smoke almost, like a sort of dampness. And for me, I've always just assumed that's that juniper branch sort of added into it, sort of adding this, I don't know, sort of moist smoke. Just another question, a good question at the bottom there from Mike. Why is Rook got a master blender signature on it when it was advertised as a single malt and not a blend? It is a single malt. Single malt being single distillery, malted barley. But we still, every whiskey producer out there, if it's someone specific to a distillery or to a group that owns many, and you've got a master blender doing things, they're not blending things. A blended whiskey would be a whiskey that's from more than one distillery. So you've got 2 distilleries whiskey or more in a bottle. But a master blender, someone like Angela for us, is somebody that sits in the lab, goes through the warehouse, nosing things, tasting things, and then decides I'm going to take 10 of these casks, 5 of these casks. That's what a master blender does. So a master blender makes single malt, rather than sort of blending. You're still blending casks together. I don't know if I'm making that sound confusing. You're still blending casks together, but because it's all from one distillery, it makes it single. And because it's all malted barley, it makes it a single malt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always a hard one to do, especially after 5 drams. So I don't know, hopefully that's come across all right. Carl, for you, what do you think about this compared to the unpainted? Yeah.
Sorry if you previously sort of referred to me. I literally just swapped earpieces, probably at the inopportune time. So if you said, Carl, what about you? And then there was silence, so that's why. Sorry, what was your question again, buddy?
Only a very general one, mate. Just say, what do you think about this compared to the unpeated stuff? Because you said earlier that you like them all. Whatever the type of whiskey is, you're easy.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot because we said yesterday when we did a little run through that you were going to guess what my favourite was. So, what is my favourite, Rich?
Well, I know you're a electric man. I know you're electric. From Tobermory, man. So I would go so far as to guess that it's this one, because that's a distillery I know that you like very much, or a brand from a distillery. I think you're going to throw me a curveball and say the green tea.
No, you're right. It's the Rook. Yeah. So I had a massive sort of peated whiskey phase that I went through, and I've come a little bit out of that to explore a few more lighter whiskies like Irish. I had a sort of Oloroso phase in between, but every time I go back to the Spencer Rook, I'm always really impressed by it, and I keep thinking, again, not necessarily as an employee of Mackmyra, but also as a whiskey drinker, I look at how much am I paying for this bottle, and am I getting the experience that kind of corresponds to that? In as much as is it a limited run, or is it, does it have enough kind of character to it, or is it quite light and friendly because it's quite sort of quote unquote cheap? And this for me sits really nicely at a price point of I can understand why it's the price why it is, and also why it's the flavor profile it is. So yeah, you get a lovely. What makes it unique, I think, is there's a rich smokiness to it. I think that's where the juniper sort of coming in with the kind of oiliness, that side of things. But yeah, for me, Spencer Rook is probably my sort of go-to to sort of tie into Eleanor's question as well. What's my go-to Mackmyra whiskey? Yeah, Spencer Rook, you can't go wrong for me.
The Spencer Rook Amerikansk Ek. I think you were trying to say pronounce earlier, Vin. That for me, the American oak. Just this basically recipe matured in just American oak rather than several different casks. That for me is one to go to. And the Huedited. If you read it as an English person or a British person, Skurdited is probably my one of my go-to favourite ones. Vin, if we haven't asked you already, what do you think your favourite is? Well, what from the evening, from tonight, what's your favourite? I know you put green tea as your whiskey of the year, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's your favourite flavour. There's all these other factors that came into it. So what's your sort of favourite to drink from tonight?
I mean, definitely the green tea. It's an astounding whiskey. That said, if it was like core range, then definitely the green tea. But because it's not, once this is gone, it'll be gone until I don't know what you guys are planning in the future. But if this is not coming again, I'll be very surprised. But in terms of core range, definitely the Rook. It's for me, it hits all of the notes that I want from a whiskey drinking experience. And it doesn't even need, I really like cask strength whiskey. I really like it. And it doesn't even need to be higher ABV because it's got everything going for it. And I more often than not reach for peat when I'm of an evening just having a whiskey. So for me, that's the one that I would reach for time and time again and not have to worry about replacing the bottle because it's so available.
We find it about. I've seen some people have started putting some comments inside of their order, but before we ask people to start submitting that, I think we had a giveaway, Carl. So I think we'll keep people's fingers free for the keyboard for a moment. I think,
okay. Fine. So we'll do it that way around. Yeah, cool. So
I think so. Yeah.
So if you hold fire on what was your favorite of the evening, have a little bit of a second to think about what your favorite of the evening is, and get ready for question mode. It is going to be a fastest finger first, so we're going to take the first two answers that we see pop up on screen. Okay, so are we all ready? All ready to type? You don't have to type much. So,
Vin's in.
Grönt Te has had how many types of different green teas put into it? Go.
We should have a drum roll bit of music in the background, perhaps, or something like just something to build the suspense. So how many types of green tea went into the Grönt Te?
Yeah.
Ooh. I saw two come up at the exact same time.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. Oh, it's almost an influx.
That's it. Everybody build up. So what I can see on my screen there is Cocktails of Lisa, who I know has joined us before, and Sam Clark. I'm not sure that Lisa's done a green tea tasting with us though, because I think it might have been the yak liquor. yeah, so yeah, Cocktails of Lisa, I think I've got in pole position.
Yeah, Cocktails of Lisa, followed by Sam Clark. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and Sam for me,
Yeah.
and then Carl Lucas, another friend of Mackmyra, in thirds. But Lisa and Sam, I think we've got as the winner. So a T-shirt and a mug for Lisa, and a mug for Sam. So if you can send us your details, send us a private message on social media or your email, and we'll get in contact with you and get that stuff sent out to you as well.
Yeah.
I don't even have one of these mugs, so you guys have done very well, I'd say. Not too bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, but lots of people there, lots of people coming in with it.
Yeah. Thank you all as well for entering. Again, it is the nature of fastest finger first. I apologise if you weren't there with it, but again, thank you for all taking part. That's the main thing, isn't it? Really.
We thought long and hard about the question when we were working this out, because we thought, right, if we leave it so that it's just like a one keyboard, a one press thing, rather than somebody have to type out a sentence or something.
Green teas that were in it.
Yeah, cool. Well, I think actually I've just seen a message from our adjudicator in the background. So from Connor pulling the strings in the background. He said, and as I did say, I saw Phil and Lisa come in at the same time, but just had Lisa at the top. Connor's made an executive decision and said that Phil and Lisa are going to get first prize each. So that's a T-shirt and a mug for Phil and Lisa each. And then the second prize to Carl. So Carl, that's a mug for you. So everyone's in from the top three. Nice. That's it. So before we start slowly, I'm pretty sure people have still got some whiskey left in their glass, but before we begin, sort of slowly winding things down, always keen to know what people's favourites were. So please comment and let us know what your favourite, even if it's your favourite or if you want to put them in order, please do. And I think I'm going to pour another little dram for myself just as we see things out.
Yeah. While people are doing their favourites, shall I do a little summary of what we've got coming up next, Richard?
Yeah, good idea. I think, what we've got the next sort of few shows and things,
Yeah, so we've got a few shows coming up, guys. So again, if it's the first time with us tonight, thank you for joining in. Thank you for coming along. And like I said, we've got a load of content already on our YouTube channel. And we've got loads more shows planned, at least for Lockdown 3, the locking in, and hopefully a little bit beyond there as we get sort of out into the real wide world. Tomorrow night, we've got our Mackmyra in, the return of the Mackmyra in. And you're going to have Richard and our colleague Mickey on screen at 6 o'clock, slightly early time for you. We'll be on for about an hour. Just chatting the breeze with Jess Lomas from Single Cask Nation. So she's the global sales manager for Single Cask Nation, and a nice bit of relaxed chat on that particular show as well. So please join on for that one. And then after the weekend on Monday, we've got our Burns Night show featuring the lovely Moa Nilsson. And if you caught us in December, we did a little show with her where we pronounced different Swedish words, and that's always worth a watch back to see Rich and Mickey kind of stumble the way over a really poor Swedish. But we're going to be tasting
Swedish words. Sorry to jump in, Carl. Sorry, but you said you're pronouncing sort of Swedish words, specifically the names of our whiskey. She was helping us pronounce. And if anyone does want to laugh, I've been told it's hilarious. For me, it was challenging and educational, I'll say. But for those who have seen it, apparently it was amusing.
Yeah. Sorry, I was in the background for that one, so I admit I was enjoying it from behind the scenes. Yeah. So we're trying our core range again, and we've got our Svensk Ruk Amerikansk Ek on the go as well for that particular show. Please dive around to our YouTube channel and subscribe to keep notified for all our shows coming up. Yeah, good. I'm watching some of these comments coming. I just thought Phil, who I think I may know from a whiskey group, but Phil, a different Phil, Connor, but favourite the rock from Phil Rosenblum, very good. Nice. The rock or the rock, always, as we said, it always does very well at the end, especially if you're a smoking person. But there was a different Phil, I think, had left the room, nipped to the loo at the wrong time when the competition started. So I'm very sorry for that. Maybe next time, join it. There we go. Join us next time, and hopefully. Take your laptop with you, if that's where you're watching it. Maybe. And then these are the Rook up there. Grönt Te seems up there as well. Svensk from Jane. I know that we had Mike earlier. Grönt Te and Rook Ek. Yeah, I think
I think I'm with Phil maybe on that one. At least how I feel tonight and what I've enjoyed this evening. As Vin said earlier, it can change. It depends your mood, what you've eaten that day, the music that might be on, and more importantly than almost anything is the company that you keep as well, and that you're with at the time. Very much looking forward to drinking in 3D with people again. Done a lot of virtual stuff now, been something of an armchair ambassador for the better part of the year.
On that part about company as well. Thank you, Vin, for joining us tonight as well. Really appreciate you joining on, for your kind words about the Grönt Te, but also your honesty and candor as well about the different whiskies. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed yourself tonight, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great to be here and to be in such great company about it as well. And genuinely a pleasure to talk about these whiskies. I mean, like you said, I mean, I'm all about the honesty. If something's not so great, I say it's not so great. Good example, I've released a video of the Macallan, and I've been quite critical of Macallan over the years for being too expensive. So that's what I'm all about. But it's great to talk about whiskey that I genuinely do like and would genuinely buy over and over again. And that's Mackmyra. So yeah, that's why I'm here.
Mate, well, thanks. We appreciate your time, really do. And what have we got coming up? So one of the last things we'll ask before we wrap up then is, what have you got coming up for your channel? What you're up to this year?
I've got quite a lot of reviews coming up. Actually, I pulled this one out because talking about the cask ownership, someone who bought a cask sent me a bottle of this. This is the Beach Hut Man.
Oh, yeah, nice. Yeah. That's a very, very good dram.
Yeah, it really. I mean, I've only had a wee bit, as you can see. I'll have covered it. This is going to be my next review, probably next week, I think, where I'll be talking a little bit more about the cask ownership. But yeah, the guy who bought this, never heard of him before, and he just emailed me up and said, "Do you want a bottle of this?" And I was like, "Yeah, send it."
I could tell you, if it wasn't for data protection, I could tell you his name now. I know. I handled that cask. Yeah, it was a Beach Hut Man. I enjoyed the picture he's got. Last quick plug for us, I guess, on the cask. If you do buy a cask, you can design your own label and have whatever you want on the front of it. And he is a Beach Hut man, so adds beach huts on the front. But you got that coming up. What else have you got in the pipeline?
I've got some very exciting things coming up. Unannounced yet, but I've got my own whiskies coming out. I'm kind of moving into the independent bottling thing. Not many people know about it, so that's kind of an exclusive for you. It's a couple of weeks off, but
is this a scoop? Have we got the scoop?
Pretty much, yeah. I've been keeping it kind of tight behind the scenes. I haven't said it out on the thing yet, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. When it's available, I'll let everybody know about it. But I've got some really good stuff coming. And I've also got the 10,000 subscriber celebration, which I haven't announced again, but I've got a tasting set going out for that as well. So that's all going to be really exciting. 2021 is going to be a huge year for YouTube in general, but hopefully for my channel, because it's going to be good.
Mate, you've earned it. You've put the hours in. You've got people subscribe to you. They don't subscribe to you by mistake. They want to see what you've got to say. And I think what you said about honesty, your candor is something that I think anybody, you don't just want to watch people trying to shove something down their throat. They want to know the real deal and what you actually think about stuff. And I think you do that. Every video I've seen of yours has been that way. So and good luck with the bottling line as well. Mate. I'm really interested. I'll sign me up. I'll have to look at that. But yeah, we'll start telling people about that. Carl will have to say we've got the scoop and you heard it here first.
We'll have to get a little sample sent this way as well. You know what I mean? Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Definitely. I'll be getting a bottle of it myself, so hopefully I'll be sharing that around because they're going to be exclusive, but they're going to be designed to be opened and drank. Nice. So I don't want to give too much away, but they are really things that you, when you see it, you'll go, "That I don't see that very often." Okay. That's one thing I will say. Nice. And maybe I'll call Mackmyra up in the future for something like that. We'll see.
Yeah, speak to. Well, yeah, we're you guys. You let us know, and we'll see. Well, that sounds. You told us before we started that you had some interesting news. You wanted to give us some towards the end. I wasn't expecting that. I thought you were just going to say I've got some interesting videos coming up, which would have been cool. But that's brilliant. So, well, good luck to you. I really mean it. And
thank you.
I say thank you for your time and for joining us. Thank you so much to everyone speaking directly to people at home. Thank you so much for everybody who's taken part, especially for everyone who's been able to comment and join in and interact with us. Carl and I are involved in so many of these tastings, and whenever we have the level of interaction we've had tonight, it really makes it so much I don't know, easier, more enjoyable. Just generally
makes me yearn for the times when you can see people in person. Definitely.
Yeah, it does. It takes that edge off of, you know, so we don't just talk to each other all the time, and we have there's a bit of back and forth with people. So thank you so much, and we hope to see you again. As Carl said, we've got a busy schedule coming up over the coming weeks.
Tomorrow night.
Check out mackmyra.co.uk. You can see what's coming up. Have a look at our YouTube homepage. You can see what's coming up as well. Back tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Myself and Mickey, and just so much from Single Cast Nation. Hope to see some of you there. And thank you, Carl, for being such a wonderful co-host and being on screen for the first time in a while. You're not rusty at all, mate. You smashed it, I think. And thank you to Connor in the background as well. And that's it. Thanks from me. And I hope to see you all again soon. Hope you've enjoyed yourselves, and cheers. Skål.
Skål.
Skål.